who built his entire image on protecting children may have been hiding something far more disturbing. Ashton Kutcher, Hollywood's golden boy, the face of anti-trafficking activism, a man praised in Congress for fighting child exploitation, is now at the center of rumors that could destroy everything he's built. Because while the world applauded his tearful speeches, behind closed doors, he was building close ties with some of the most dangerous names in the entertainment industry. And now, shocking allegations, secret recordings, and sealed FBI files are painting a terrifying picture that no one saw coming. How did the man who claimed to save children end up entangled in one of the darkest scandals Hollywood has ever seen? The answer may be even more twisted than anyone imagined. For years, Ashton Kutcher was untouchable. From starring in hit sitcoms to launching tech companies, he crafted a near-perfect public image. But what truly elevated him above so many other celebrities was his mission, his fight to protect children from some of the world's darkest crimes. In 2012, Ashton co-founded Thorn, a nonprofit organization focused on using technology to combat child exploitation online. It wasn't just charity, it was his passion, his calling. He testified before Congress, choking up as he described the horrors he'd witnessed, unwatchable footage of children victimized in ways most people couldn't even imagine. His voice cracked, and lawmakers gave him a standing ovation. The media praised him. Headlines called him a hero. Social media turned him into a symbol of hope, proof that Hollywood wasn't entirely broken. For a while, it seemed like Ashton Kutcher had found his true purpose beyond acting. Someone who had seen the worst of the world and was now using his platform to make a real difference. But while the cameras focused on his tearful speeches, very few people were asking where Ashton spent his nights. And even fewer were looking at the people he chose to surround himself with behind closed doors. While Ashton was winning praise for his activism, few people noticed the strange connection forming quietly in the background. His growing friendship with Diddy Combs. At first glance, it seemed harmless. Hollywood celebrities crossing. Paths isn't exactly unusual, but this wasn't just casual red carpet photos or polite conversations at charity galas. Their relationship ran much deeper. They trained for marathons together. They attended exclusive parties in private penthouses. Ashton became a regular at Diddy's inner circle events, gatherings that weren't meant for public eyes, far removed from the cameras that followed his philanthropic work. People close to the scene describe Ashton as more than just a guest. He was comfortable, familiar, like someone who belonged in those rooms. And at these private gatherings, the rules were very different. There were no reporters, no photographers, just NDAs, locked doors, and an unspoken understanding that what happened inside stayed hidden. But as federal investigations into Diddy's milieu activities began to unfold, those secret parties have taken on a far darker meaning. Because these weren't just harmless celebrity get-togethers. According to multiple lawsuits, witness testimonies, and federal sources, Diddy's private events may have been at the center of a massive trafficking operation, complete with hidden surveillance, underage guests, and a growing list of victims willing to talk. And Ashton, he wasn't just connected by association. Insiders allege he was there, often, and sometimes he even brought others with him. For years, rumors swirled around Diddy's private world, the extravagant parties, the secrecy, the powerful guests. But it wasn't until recently that the whispers turned into full-blown investigations. In early 2024, federal agents executed coordinated raids on multiple Diddy-owned properties, penthouse suites, private estates, even his yacht, all searched by authorities looking for hard evidence of crimes that had been hidden for years. What they reportedly uncovered was far worse than anyone expected. Surveillance footage, phones, packed with encrypted data, hard drives containing hours of unedited video, all allegedly documenting illegal activities behind closed doors. Lawsuits began piling up. Victims came forward, describing horrific scenes, underage girls being trafficked, guests being recorded without their knowledge, drugs flowing freely, and powerful celebrities mingling as though none of it was unusual. And those videos? Sources claimed they weren't just for personal entertainment. They were part of a sophisticated blackmail operation. Hidden cameras were allegedly placed throughout Diddy's properties, capturing compromising footage of high-profile guests. That could be used as leverage if anyone tried to speak out. As the investigation expanded, so did the list of names connected to these events. And among them, Ashton Kutcher's name kept surfacing, not just as a casual visitor, but as a recurring presence. Federal insiders claim that multiple tapes being reviewed by investigators feature Ashton at these events, sometimes appearing visibly uncomfortable, but still present, still participating in gatherings where underage girls were being exploited. And the more investigators dig, the more it seems Ashton's carefully built public image may have been hiding a much darker reality, one he may no longer be able to outrun. In the middle of this twisted web is a name that's only now beginning to surface. Ava, Diddy's adopted daughter. For years, her existence was kept quiet, tucked away from the media's attention. But insiders say she saw everything. Raised. Inside Diddy's world, Ava grew up surrounded by the luxury, the celebrities, and the secrets that came with them. She wasn't just a bystander, she was exposed to the very parties now under federal investigation. And according to people close to her, Ava is no longer willing to stay silent. At first, she spoke in whispers, passing information through trusted contacts, hinting at the things she'd witnessed. But as the federal raids intensified, so did her disclosures. What makes Ava's story so disturbing is her specific connection to Ashton Kutcher. Multiple sources allege that Ashton personally introduced Ava to many of the people who attended these exclusive gatherings. He would pull her aside, introduce her to powerful figures, and tell her she belonged in these circles. To a young girl idolizing Ashton as a trusted mentor, it felt like acceptance, like being part of something special. But in hindsight, Ava now sees it differently. She reportedly believes those introductions were part of a calculated grooming process, a way to make her comfortable in rooms where unspeakable things were happening behind closed doors. Her statements suggest Ashton wasn't just attending these parties. He was playing an active role in bringing others into Diddy's orbit, and possibly into danger. And now, as more evidence piles up, Ava's growing willingness to speak publicly could become the most devastating blow yet. Because if her full testimony is revealed, it won't just implicate Diddy. It could expose an entire network of powerful people who helped maintain the silence. And Ashton Kutcher may be one of the most recognizable faces among them. For years, Ashton Kutcher managed to dodge public scrutiny. But as the allegations surrounding Diddy intensified, people began revisiting old interviews. And that's when cracks in Ashton's carefully polished image started to surface. One clip in particular went viral. During his appearance on Hot Ones, Ashton was asked about the infamous Diddy parties, the very gatherings that are now under federal investigation. His reaction was immediate and impossible to ignore. The question caught him off guard. He paused, visibly uncomfortable, his eyes darting as if scanning for the safest response. Then he gave a nervous laugh and muttered, "I can't tell that one either. I'm actually cycling through them." The awkward stumble, the panicked glance, the forced smile, all of it told a different story than his words. Body. Language experts jumped on the clip, analyzing every subtle movement, every hesitation. To many, it didn't look like the reaction of someone simply protecting a friend's privacy. It looked like fear. Fear of saying too much. Fear of accidentally revealing something that could not be undone. On its own, it might have been dismissed as an awkward moment. But in the context of the growing investigation, that hesitation suddenly carried a much darker weight. Because if there was nothing to hide, why did a simple question send him into visible panic? The timing couldn't have been worse, as lawsuits against Diddy multiplied and whispers of incriminating evidence swirled online. Ashton's uncomfortable interviews fueled even more speculation. And soon, people weren't just questioning what Ashton had seen, they were asking what he might have actively participated in. The internet started digging deeper, old clips resurfaced, past relationships were re-examined, and what they found next raised even more disturbing questions about Ashton Kutcher's past, questions that led directly back to the earliest years of his career. As the allegations continued stacking up, internet users started looking back at Ashton's early years, and one old interview began circulating again, raising uncomfortable questions. It was a behind-the-scenes story from that 70s show, shared years ago by Mila. She described how, at just 14 years old, she filmed her first on-screen kiss with Ashton, who was 19 at the time. In the interview, Mila laughed nervously as she recalled being extremely anxious and unsure during the filming. According to her, some of the older cast members teased and encouraged the moment, turning it into something lighthearted in the public eye. At the time, few saw any issue with the story. In fact, many brushed it off as part of Hollywood's culture, a young actress finding her footing in a complicated industry. But with today's context, people have started viewing that moment through a much more serious lens. It wasn't simply a story of two actors sharing a scene, it was a glimpse into how blurred boundaries were often treated as normal in the entertainment world, especially for young performers starting their careers. As conversations about exploitation in Hollywood have grown, that old clip now feels like part of a much bigger pattern, one where the industry's power structures allowed questionable situations to be quietly accepted for years. And when connected to the allegations Ashton faces today, this resurfaced moment raises the difficult question: how long have those blurred lines existed? And how often were they ignored? This wasn't proof of guilt, but for many, it was one more piece in a growing puzzle that's becoming harder to dismiss. As the investigation into Diddy's empire deepened, whispers of what federal agents had uncovered began to leak online, and the details were chilling. Sources close to the case claimed the FBI had seized what insiders began calling the Doomsday File, a massive sealed folder containing some of the most damning evidence ever collected from inside Hollywood's elite circles. According to federal leaks, the file held hours of unedited surveillance footage from Diddy's private parties, footage captured by hidden cameras placed throughout his penthouses, his yacht, and multiple off-the-books locations. But it wasn't just video. The file allegedly contained hundreds of pages of NDAs, guest lists, private communications, and even audio recordings of high-profile celebrities caught in compromising conversations. And at the center of this storm, Ashton Kutcher's name reportedly appeared not once, but multiple times. Insiders claim that Ashton could be seen in several of the tapes, not as a background extra, but seated close to Diddy, chatting with young guests who, according to many, appeared far too young to be there. In some clips, Ashton allegedly helped coordinate certain parts of the night, directing guests, organizing introductions, and moving freely through rooms filled with activities no one was supposed to see. There were even rumors of secret audio recordings captured at Diddy's private studio, where multiple voices joked about initiations and welcoming people into the industry. One of those voices, according to online whisperers, may have belonged to Ashton himself. If true, these recordings wouldn't just be career-ending, they could carry serious legal consequences. And while no official charges had been filed against Ashton yet, his name's repeated appearance in these confidential files painted a terrifying picture. Not of a man who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, but of someone who may have been deeply woven into the very system he claimed to fight against. As Ashton's name kept surfacing in connection to the growing scandal, attention quickly turned to someone else, his wife, Mila Kunis. In the early days of the controversy, Mila had stood by Ashton's side, even co-signing the now infamous letter of support for their That 70s Show co-star Danny Masterson after his conviction on multiple sexual assault charges. That letter alone triggered massive backlash, with many calling out the disturbing hypocrisy of publicly supporting victims while privately defending a convicted predator. But after that wave of criticism, something changed. Mila Kunis seemed to vanish. No more interviews, no public appearances. Social media accounts fell silent. Paparazzi who once regularly captured the couple out together suddenly had nothing. Her complete disappearance didn't go unnoticed. Speculation quickly erupted. Was she protecting herself, distancing from Ashton? Or, as some whispered, quietly, cooperating behind the scenes as investigators dug deeper? According to unconfirmed reports, Mila had allegedly warned Ashton early on to distance himself from Diddy, fearing that his continued association could eventually pull them both into legal danger. Legal sources even suggested Ashton's lawyers advised him to step back from Diddy's circle as early as 2023, long before the federal raids began. But pulling away after years of participation doesn't erase what came before. And Mila's silence has only fueled more speculation that she may know far more than anyone realizes. If Ava's full testimony comes to light, and if federal prosecutors move forward, Mila's role, whether as a silent bystander or someone with direct knowledge, will likely face intense public and legal scrutiny. And as her silence stretches on, many are left wondering, is she preparing for the fallout or quietly negotiating her own survival? As the investigation widened, old wounds resurfaced, and one of them led straight back to Brittany Murphy. Before Mila, before the activism and the public image, Ashton Kutcher was in a high-profile relationship with Brittany, the rising star whose tragic and untimely death in 2009 has haunted Hollywood ever since. The official cause of death was listed as pneumonia and anemia. But even back then, many questioned how a healthy 32-year-old woman could deteriorate so rapidly. Months later, her husband, Simon Monjack, also died under similarly strange circumstances. Two deaths eerily close together, both ruled as accidents, yet surrounded by whispers that never truly faded. Now, in light of the allegations swirling around Diddy and Ashton, Brittany's death has taken on new significance. Friends of Brittany have long claimed she grew paranoid in her final years. She felt watched. She confided in close contacts. That she wanted to speak out, but didn't know who she could trust. Some believe she had seen something she wasn't supposed to see, at the very parties now being investigated by federal authorities. Photographs place her at events hosted by Diddy, with Ashton often present. The connections that once seemed harmless now look deeply suspicious under the weight of new allegations. Did Brittany discover the darker side of Hollywood's most protected circles? Did she stumble into secrets that made her a liability? No direct evidence has ever officially tied her death to foul play, but in the court of public opinion, the timing, the paranoia, and the silence that followed have become impossible to ignore. As more pieces fall into place, Brittany's mysterious final days stand as a haunting reminder that this story may be far bigger and far darker than anyone imagined. By now, it's clear this isn't just about Ashton Kutcher or even Diddy alone. The deeper investigators dig, the more it looks like they've stumbled onto something far bigger, a system carefully built to protect the most powerful people in Hollywood. Behind the glitz, the premieres, and the charity galas, there's a different world. One guarded by ironclad NDAs, massive legal teams, and the silent complicity of people who knew better than to ask questions. The parties weren't just wild nights filled with celebrities. According to whistleblowers, they were meticulously orchestrated. Cameras hidden behind mirrors, private rooms reserved for special guests, and a revolving door of influencers, models, and underage victims brought in under the guise of opportunity. The Doomsday File, allegedly collected by federal agents, paints a horrifying picture of how these operations worked, with organizers using secret footage as leverage, controlling reputations, careers, and entire networks of powerful individuals. And while Ashton publicly campaigned to protect children, insiders now suggest he may have known far more about what was happening behind closed doors than he ever admitted. Even those who didn't directly participate may have been trapped in a web of silence, too scared to speak, too compromised to walk away. For years, these circles operated with impunity, shielded by wealth, influence, and a system designed to silence victims before their stories ever reach the public. But as more victims come forward, and as whistleblowers continue leaking damning information, that carefully protected structure is beginning to collapse. And if Ava's full testimony is released, combined with the sealed evidence federal agents are now reviewing, it could trigger a domino effect that takes down far more than just a few recognizable faces. The question is no longer if people were complicit, it's how many and for how long. Ashton Kutcher built his legacy on the promise of protection, the man who stood between the vulnerable and the predators. But now, that image is crumbling, piece by piece. Every old clip, every resurfaced photo, every leaked whisper pulls the curtain back a little further, revealing not just a man, but an entire industry built on silence, secrets, and selective morality. The rumors can't be dismissed as internet noise anymore. The federal raids were real. The evidence exists. And Ava, the quiet, forgotten girl raised in the shadows of the elite, may soon become the loudest voice in the room, if she speaks. Publicly, if those tapes surface, if the so-called Doomsday File is ever released, Ashton won't just lose his reputation, he could lose everything. Already, his credibility is in shambles. His resignation from Thorne wasn't damage control. It was a warning shot. A silent admission that something was unraveling behind the scenes. Mila's disappearance, the resurfacing of Brittany Murphy's name, the sealed testimony, all signs that the story isn't over. In fact, it might just be beginning, because what's happening now isn't just the fall of a single man. It's the exposure of a system that allowed it all to happen. And if the walls are closing in on Ashton, they may be closing in on everyone who helped keep the doors shut for this long. The question now isn't whether justice is coming. It's who's next?